Welcome to episode 6 of CirqueCast. And on this episode, we're going to talk about all about Luzia. We previously talked about Luzia on previous episodes, but never as someone who has actually seen the show. And now Ricky and I previously saw Luzia back in May. So now this is sort of our review on CirqueCast.
You're watching CirqueCast, the podcast for everything Cirque du Soleil, featuring artist interviews, Cirque headlines, and the inside scoop to your favorite show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy CirqueCast.
So if you don't already know, Luzia is Cirque du Soleil's newest big club production, which premiered in Montreal on May 4th.
Well, April 21st, technically, for previews, and then May the 4th, yeah.
Right, so April 21st were the previews, and then May 4th was the official premiere where they had the big, party with the celebrities. And again, if you don't know, Luzia was inspired by Mexico. And on the previous episode, we talked about, the Mexican government, paying, or I guess investing in Luzia for tourism. But yes, so Luzia is inspired by Mexico, and the name comes from, it's a mix between luz, which is light, and lluvia, which is rain. So their slogan is, Luzia takes you into imaginary Mexico like a walking dream where light quenches the spirit and rain soothes the soul. But Ricky, I believe you made an observation that they previously changed that a little bit?
Yeah, it looks like the first one was something along the lines of where rain predicts the future and light reveals the truth. And then it morphed into this where light quenches the spirit and rain soothes the soul. And there was a third one, and I saw it somewhere, and I remember pointing it out to you, but I don't have it on hand right now. And basically it just changes a word or two, but that change kind of really changes the overall view of the show. So I'm going to try and find it.
I do think that the first one they had, the one where there was nothing out at that time except for the name, I thought that was a little more mysterious. I liked it a little bit more. Yes, I understand why they're going with it, with the new one. It does make sense in the show, I guess. But I just thought the first one was a little more mysterious. Dario, what do you think of Luzia? You haven't seen the show, but based on what you've seen, what do you think of the show?
I think it's definitely one that you can go and watch without having to really invest much in, thought. You can just sit back and actually enjoy what's happening on stage. That's what I like about the way Cirque's going now. Very just, it looks like from the get-go it's just going to be fun. Sit back and have a good time.
So let me ask you, when the first teaser videos came out and they kind of had all that flashy images and the techno beat, what did you think about the show when those came out? Because I know when I saw it, I was like, what the hell is this? What crossed your mind when you saw it? Were you like, did you embrace it as, hell yes, here's this wonderful new thing coming, or did you kind of look and go, I don't know, this is a little bizarre?
It hit me like every fan. The first 10 seconds, I couldn't wrap my head around it. But by the end of the first, the last 20 seconds, I was hooked. I thought this looks super unique. It looks very cerebral. That's the first thing I got from it. Okay, maybe this is going to be a show where you really have to use your mind and really dig deep. But from all the video clips now, I don't get that feeling. But I definitely got a feeling of man, we're just going to let go and really go for it. I mean, I saw the cactus. I thought, okay, that's a cool image. Never thought it'd be a character. Like, I mean, I've seen the whole thing and the dude with the arms and like, wow, a cactus character. Bring it on. So excited.
And see, I was the opposite of Ricky when that came out. And I do admit, when I first heard about the show, the project being announced with, it was going to be inspired by Mexico, I said, why? Why do we need another Mexican show? We have Hoya, you have the park, there's no need for another Mexican show. And so when I saw the teaser, like, it intrigued me. I wanted to know more. I mean, it was so colorful. Like it was. Some people thought it was tacky. I honestly don't think so. Yeah, you saw the cactus and this and that, and it made me wonder at least if it was going to be a very cliche show. Um, but the music just drew me in right away.
Yeah.
And again, at that time, there was nothing else about the show out. You pretty much just went by that teaser. And for me, it's like I want to see the show. I want to know more about the show. And then slowly we started getting more glimpses. But it didn't really make sense. I mean, we saw like
Still
the
don't make sense to people who haven't seen it. I'll tell you that
Right.
now.
And it probably won't. I mean, there's a lot about this show that draws a lot from Mexican culture, and not a lot of that to me, because of course I've not been introduced to that culture a lot. Is not something that I get at first view, and this is one of the things that I told Jose when we saw it. I'm like, I like it, but it's not hitting me, and it wasn't until I did the research into the show, reading the texts that were in the program book, and it is a pre-program book, so it's not the official book, and the press releases and all the things that Cirque released about the show, and then trying to kind of reorganize it into a more coherent narrative, that I finally understood why this was there, why that was going on, what this curtain is all about, what the horse is there for, why the people are in cactus costumes. And then all the different staging parts, it all kind of fell into place. And unfortunately, I needed all these other things in order for it to click. So when I saw the teaser, I'm going, well, I don't know. And I mean, I know I'm jaded, and people say that I'm jaded, but that's because I've been following Cirque for a long time. So I've seen them at their highs, and I've seen them at their lows. And so as each new product comes out, new show, and whether it's a movie or a special event or a tent show or a resident show, I accept that it's coming and I'm open about it coming, but I'm very skeptical. And so when the Curio stuff came out, not to get off topic, it intrigued me because I do like the steampunk aesthetic. So it intrigued me. It was mysterious enough, and I go, okay, this could be really good. When Luzia stuff came out, I go, I don't know. Now, see, I like techno music, so the music was great, loved the beat, but just the visuals that it was throwing at me really didn't grab my attention to say, okay, this is going to be a good Cirque show. It wasn't until more material came out, and that's what I was waiting for. I needed it to be in context, and so once I got that context, and then once we saw the show, it all started to fall into place, and I was like, yep, bring it on, let's go, this is great.
Dario, you said you feel like this is one of those shows where you can just go in and enjoy it. It's fun. In a sense, yes, the show is fun. It's a great show. But if you want to know why this, why that, you do have to kind of read about the inspirations, and then it makes sense. And, in a way, it makes the show even better because you know where they're coming from. You know why that is, and you're like, wow, that's genius, or wow, that's awesome, or, that's cool. And I feel like because this is more specific to a certain place like Mexico, you do have to in a way do that with this show when compared to the other shows. You go to Zarkana and you're like the pickle lady, right? And you're like, you don't wonder why.
Well, I wonder why, but that's okay.
But you're like you don't really need to know why. It's just a weird, bizarre thing that happens.
Beautifully bizarre image that makes perfect sense to me. It's not going to hit everyone the same way.
I feel that's the major difference between Luzia and the other shows. The other shows they're loosely based on something, but again, not necessarily a country, not necessarily on a culture.
I know, I like that, but the fact that you have to leave the show and look into it further is a great idea, but the average goer is not going to do that. So a lot might get lost in translation because, not lazy, but a lot of Cirque fans aren't, necessarily, they just don't care. They want to walk into the show and experience everything right then and there and then leave. Just like Curious does, And you
I think your average
experience it, you leave.
I was going to say, I think your average spectator is going to walk into a Cirque show and they're really not going to know one thing from another. I mean, here in Atlanta, I see people go to Amaluna. They're like, "Oh, Cirque's in town again." They don't know what it is. They don't know what the theme is. So they go and they see the show and they're like, this act they like, that act they didn't, whatever. Overall, great show. Clap. Everything's great. The next show comes, Curios, and it's the same thing. Oh, Cirque's in town. Let's go see Cirque. So they don't know necessarily. I mean, they know that it's a different show. They don't necessarily know, like we do, like fans do, the intricacies of what the theme of the show is. So in that sense, anybody who's going to walk into Luzia isn't going to care. Somebody like me, and again, I know I'm jaded and I'm maybe at a slightly different level. I want to know why, and for this show, when I walked into it, I didn't know, and so I was a little disconnected. But I've always maintained that I've got to see them at least 2 or 3 times, and then they'll click, if they're going to click. The first time, not so clicky. The second time we saw it, was good. So
Interesting. Now, maybe that's why Cirque is doing this whole new approach with the tent, because they want your basic fan to be like, okay, well, that's a Cirque tent, but that don't look like a Cirque tent. What's going on? It might get their interest up just a little bit more because it's not the iconic tent. I don't know. I'm super excited to see it.
And then
I
you
can't
have
wait.
the whole, the tent. It's supposed to be inspired by, the solar system. Yeah, and like Ricky said, the same with the show. It's the same with the tent. People are not going to know why Cirque has a new tent.
Well,
If you
where the
see
hell?
tent, you're not going to know that it's supposed to represent the sun and the moon. And
You're
it's
not
supposed to
going to
be
know
like,
that, but you're going to know it's a Cirque tent. Anyone that's ever been to a show knows a Cirque tent regardless of what the color is. So when they're going to see it, they're just going to wonder, well, why is it this? Why is it different? If I did see Amaluna, if I did see Curious, it's in your yellow and blue, stripe or swirl tent. So
or white.
yeah, I guess does the white tent travel in America? I don't
It
know.
has.
generally it has. Generally, no. Only when they just don't have a striped tent for it. Then, so like back in 2002 through 4, when they brought all the shows back on shore, Alegria, Quidam, etc. They had the 2 of them in the white tent because Dralion was still here and Averikai was in one. So I mean everything was tapped out.
That's really cool. I like that.
I wish they'd do that again, but now we have Arena.
So I have a question, because I don't like to look into too much stuff before I see the show. I like little teases, but since we're talking, I might as well ask. Who's the director, and what has he done previously as far as Cirque goes?
That's a kind of a tricky question. So
No, it's a simple question.
okay, so Daniele Finzi Pasca, who directed Corteo, was the director of Lucia, and he was co-directing with his wife. So Julie Hamlin, which is Danielle's wife, was co-directing with him, and they actually co-wrote the show.
Right.
And then,
Perfect.
and then we started getting, the glimpses and clips of Lucia, and I remember Ricky when I asked you, did you see Danielle at the press conference?
Yeah.
It was a press conference, and I said because I didn't see him in any of the pictures, and it was just so weird to me. And before that, they were releasing the web series, and you never really saw him. There was only one with the singer, but that was actually after the press conference, I believe. And so it was weird to me. But then we later found out that Daniele had to abandon the project somewhat because of personal problem, an illness.
I don't think he's ever come back to the project. So for the first time, they had to put in an associate director, and her name is Bridget or Brigitte. I'm not sure how you would pronounce it. Poupart.
So she's a newcomer?
She's from Quebec, and so although Cirque is keeping this very kind of low key, they still have Danielle's name on the show.
Yeah.
She basically picked up the skeleton of what he left and created the show. And basically it's kind of like the first director from Quebec that has done a Cirque show. I guess
Wow.
that's how they're saying it. But like I said, they're kind of keeping that low key.
Well, that's interesting history for sure. It's very, very sad for the guy. It would have been cool to see where he would have taken it. Do you think that affected the show in any way whatsoever?
I personally think so. I like the show a lot. I don't know that it perhaps as fully flourished as Corteo was. I mean, you've seen Corteo, I assume, and when Corteo premiered, there was so many elements that make Lucia seem simple by comparison, and that isn't necessarily a knock on it, but that's just my interpretation.
But I get a simplistic feel from Corteo. Everything feels the same. Everything feels not basic, but just the same. The same feel throughout, like the costumes, the makeup, everyone kind of looks and feels the same. So it's kind of the same I'm getting, it's not from this because there's like birds and cactuses, but as far as the simplicity goes on stage.
Well, the problem is that we don't necessarily know how much of the show is Daniela's, We don't know when exactly he left. We were told that, the next director, Brigitte, or however you pronounce it, took over that skeleton of what was supposed to be Daniela's show. But again, we don't know exactly what are his ideas, what exactly did he was created when he was there.
Yeah,
it makes you wonder as well. Did he approve the costumes? The music,
the acts, any of the integration.
Yeah. That brings me to more questions, if you don't mind.
No, go right on ahead.
So, now that I've seen 11 Cirque shows, I'm kind of seeing patterns in acts. Kind of feels like they don't copy them and paste them, but they kind of do. It's like not every trapeze act's the same, but they kind of are.
Are you getting jaded, sir?
No, I'm not getting jaded. I'm just starting to notice, like, there's only so much you can really do before you can't. I mean, I don't know. I just want to know, like, when I saw the acronet or the hand puppets, like, it just things you never think you'd ever see on a Cirque stage. Are there those moments in this show?
Yes.
And don't give them away. You don't give them away.
Well, we'll have to talk about them.
Well, you can talk about it if you want, but
so I think there's one act that Jose and I are in 100% agreement that it blew us away, and that's the Adagio act.
Sure.
Would you agree, Jose?
Yeah, and so what I was gonna say is,
I mean,
some of the the same acts that you've seen in another show, but they're taking to a completely different level, or they add a.
I didn't hear what he said. What was the act?
So in Saltimbanco, you've got the mother, the father, and the kid right at the beginning. Okay, so that's an Adagio act. So basically, Adagio is like a slow movement. So in this show, now it's also been in Veracai. You saw it on the video as the dancers, and in Corteo. So in this show, it's a group of 4. So you have 3 guys and 1 girl. So you kind of combine Adagio, kind of a slow movement, with a little bit of banquine, and you got what is in Lucia, and it is amazing.
There's 3 guys and 1 girl, and so basically they're just pretty much like throwing and flipping her, and and Adagio act. You don't think that it's a dangerous act per se. It's a slow. This one is a little more fast. There's a part where you're on your edge of your seat because you feel like she's going to get hurt. Like
she's going to hit her head on the stage.
For sure. Because they toss her from her feet, they throw her and the other from one side. So there's a guy in the middle, another guy on the side, and then another guy over here. So she is facing this way, or I guess the guy in the middle is holding her with her feet, and then the other guy's holding her hands, her arms.
Okay.
And so then they toss her to the side like that, and the other guy has to catch her. And so it's like if that guy misses her arms, her hands, she's going to hit the floor. She's going to hit the stage, like her head. And so it's dangerous. They throw her up in the air as well. And that's one of those things where I said, I mentioned it's one of those acts that you've seen in other shows, but it's taken to a new level. And it was just, and not only that, you also have Tiembla la Tierra, which is on the track, but in the track it's a little more, I guess it's faster, but live, beautiful.
Beautiful song.
Beautiful song and beautiful act, and it's just one of those where you're like, wow, this act alone is amazing.
Cool. So there is some unexpected. There's going to be your obvious basic Cirque, but there's going to be some curveballs thrown.
And then I think the second one that maybe Jose and I might agree on 100% is the contortionist kid. When he came out, I'm like, okay, we knew, of course, there's going to be contortion, and if you've done any kind of reading up on who he is, you know that he is basically pretty bendable. But when he comes out on stage and he unwraps himself, I went, oh my god. And I've seen a number of contortion acts, and this guy blew me away.
Crazy.
Really?
You know how you get that moment in Kuza where the girl goes to the front and then she does that little crab thing
around
or whatever?
the world thing?
Right. Okay. Imagine that, but starting as soon as the act starts, because people are like, like they can't believe it. This guy can bend like crazy. You have no idea, and you're like, what in the world is happening?
I've seen one clip, and it just didn't. I couldn't compute because his body went like this, and it doesn't. How do you do? Wait a minute, but you're. And he went like, oh, I was like, all right.
So at least those two acts, in my opinion, are like they're raising the bar completely.
And
with
how
your
many
traditional.
acts are in the show?
About 10.
10
I
acts.
think 10 overall.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You got hoop diving.
So,
Yeah, you got hoop diving, the Adagio, your Cyr Wheel and trapeze, hand balancing, the football freestyle, your pole dancing, that 360 swing thing, aerial straps, a juggling act, contortion, Russian swings, and that's the last.
You said aerial straps?
Yes.
How many people?
Just one.
Just
Just
one.
one?
And
Okay,
he's
this act is
the
great.
third act. He is probably the third that makes this show. And it's not necessarily...
Really?
Oh, yes. I have seen again.
The same act. It's not like the straps act that you're thinking of. It's not, and nothing against the Atherton twins, but you've seen them in several different shows. It's not that act at all. In fact,
Well,
he doesn't even go out in the public or anything like that, but he doesn't need to.
So he stays in his little water bowl. Or his little water hole.
No. He's all over. That whole scene is set up to be like you're in a cenote, and he commands that scene. It's beautifully lit. It's wonderfully staged. And yes, he has a sexy body. I'd love to have it. I don't. But the act that he performs is phenomenal. I mean, again, I've seen a number of strap acts. I mean, yes, the Atherton twins, and they are great. But this guy, with what he does, I thought he was going to wrench his arm out of socket.
What?
I mean, he is up there, and he is twisting on one shoulder, up and down and around, and all sorts of different moves and movements that you do with aerial straps. And I'm going, oh my god, he is going to break his arm off, it's going to fall in the water, but no. And he keeps doing it over and over and over again, and then he falls down into the water, and he's splashing all around, and he goes back up and he does it again. And I'm going, I love this. It was a fantastic act.
Wow. What about you, Jose? I mean...
straps?
Yeah, the strap act.
I loved it. I mean, it was great. The choreography for that it's great. I'm telling you, he doesn't need to go out into the public to amaze them. What I'm talking about with
yeah, it's a gimmick. It's very gimmicky. It's
well,
powerful.
Not necessarily, because the Atherton twins do it all the time, and it's great. People love it, and again, they are great. Yes, they've done this act in what now? 4 shows now. Okay, yes, they've done it in 4 shows. However, they are good, and they know that, and everyone knows that the Atherton twins are good, and they still amaze, the audience. But in Lucia, this strap sack, it's just one of those where you don't need those big moves for that. This guy does it all on his own, like in that little cenote, like that spot, going up and down, and then you forgot to mention the Jaguar.
All
He
right.
interacts with the Jaguar puppet. I mean, the way those puppeteers move the Jaguar, like it's so,
Realistic.
yeah, it looks like it's real,
How
and
many
just the
puppets are
interaction.
used? Is it just that Jaguar, or is there
You got
more?
There's
two.
a
You got the
horse.
Jaguar. There's a big horse, and there's 3 people that fit in that. And then there are some other costumes that kind of come out. There's like a cockroach. Of course, there was a
There's an
armadillo,
armadillo.
and
There's
then
a
there's a
snake.
couple that come out as leaves.
A leaf, like
A leaf.
a,
Yep. Like
a
a leaf.
leaf. Okay,
Yep.
I mean cactus, leaf. Why not?
Oh, there's 3 cactus.
Yeah. There's 3
Cacti, I
cactuses.
mean.
Cacti.
Cacti. Yes, sir.
Cactus.
Cactus. That's
Cactus.
right. If you see the show, you'll know why.
Well, I've seen the picture. I know why.
And
I've seen
it's
it.
prominent, and he comes out, and he is no bad feelings toward that. He is out there. He is out and proud with that.
Well, I mean that's how Cirque is. They're very tongue in cheek with their you know, Frenchness,
With their
if you will.
And it's the same it's the same. The puppeteers are the ones who are doing the cacti, and the ones that are doing the I guess they're more of, yes, the horse, but they're the puppeteers, but they're also more of a comedic trio in a way. In some of the
That is cool.
some of the
Especially when they're the cacti, they're more
exactly. And I don't know. I think you already saw the curtain call. If you'll see it's 2 guys and a girl, and they have the little cactus sleeve. That's how they come out. That's them. Those are the puppeteers, and we mentioned the horse. So I guess we initially see the horse at the beginning of the show. I guess we should explain how the show kind of begins, and then we can talk about what we didn't really like about. Um, So the show begins. You hear like an airplane passing by, and then you hear the announcements in French. And I don't speak French, and Ricky, I don't think you speak French either. So I really couldn't tell what they were saying. But basically, yes, it's an airplane that passes by, and then you see the main character kind of jump out of the plane, and he's falling, and so they have this effect where he's just the wind's hitting his face, and his cheeks are like all the way back. Yeah, exactly. And you hear the wind just passing through, and so then he's trying, or he tries to open up his parachute, but of course it doesn't work, and so he's freaking out, and so finally, he takes off his backpack, he pulls out something, and then the backpack flies away. And I think those effects when he's falling, I really like that, because it does seem like he's falling in the air. And so then, so he grabs something, and then he opens it, and it's this little umbrella. And so, now he's just gliding, or yeah, kind of gliding down, falling down, and then he lands, and then and on the stage you already have the 5,000 flowers. What's the name of the flower?
Right. I don't know how you pronounce it. The pastil. Yeah, I'm very bad with Spanish pronunciation as well. But yes, there are 5,000 of them.
So he lands, and he lands kind of in a field of flowers, and he sees this key. He goes to the key, he turns it, and then the music starts, and out comes this running girl, she's really running, and in fact, I just realized that that's probably what's represented in the teaser. It's the running girl.
Right.
I never really connected those. So she's coming out, and she has these huge butterfly wings, and she's on those treadmills. That you've probably seen. And so she's running, and then you see the horse back there, which I really like the horse. I know Ricky mentioned that they were meant to be for corteo, but for whatever reason, it just didn't make it. I honestly think that it fits better in Lucia than it would have in Corteo. I don't know if you agree with that, Ricky, but I like that those little playful horses in Corteo.
Well, I mean, that's what I heard. I mean, I could have misheard. I think I've only seen it once where somebody mentioned, oh, yes, this was going to be for Corteo, and they couldn't make it work. And so they went with the more simplistic, puppets for Corteo. But yeah, in Lucia, it's a really wonderful bit, especially since horses, connect with the Mexican culture, which again is one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily understand unless you kind of do a little bit of research, or you're from Mexico, and then of course you completely understand what it's supposed to represent. I mean, and even the running girl. I mean, the running girl represents a small group, and I'm not sure if it's small, but a group of people that live in the mountains that what they do is they've learned to run, and they can run for miles and miles without having to stop. And so that's what she's representing. And with her butterfly wings, she's also representing, the monarch butterfly migration that happens every year between Mexico and Canada. So you've got all of those cultural things that are meshing in with the opening of this show, which you probably wouldn't get unless you maybe did a little reading. But maybe when you see it, you go, well, why is she a butterfly? And why is she running on a treadmill? And what's that horse doing back there? And why are there flowers here on the stage? Maybe you would and maybe you wouldn't. But those are the kinds of questions that cross my mind as I see these things, because, like for Kidam, you see a mother and a father, and you see a living room, and you understand the setting, and everything is explainable. You know why it's there. There's a rug, you know why there's a rug there. There's a door, you understand why the door is there. You've got table and a lamp and chairs, and you understand everything that's going on. The only thing that you may not understand what's going on is what's happening when, Kidam puts the hat on her head. And then I think you can probably extrapolate, oh, we're going into the fantastical realm. For Lucia, it's a beautiful opening. But it just takes a moment to understand, oh, he's turning the key, he's opening the world of Lucia. I kind of interpreted it because when you listen to the music, you hear chimes, you hear things starting up, gears kind of starting up. So I kind of think of it somewhat as like a curio. You're winding up the world, and now the actions in these little bubbles are starting to spring to life. And so then she comes and starts running, and the horse starts galloping, and all these things start to happen.
Yeah, and especially if you look at the at the last scene of the show, where everyone just kind of stops, and he has to go and wind the key again. So knowing what you know now, and before knowing that, when you saw that scene, did you like that scene?
You're asking me?
Yeah. So did your mind change about that scene after knowing what it represented?
Yes, it did. Because when I looked at it, I go, okay, I don't understand. I mean, I went in and I said, okay, there must be a cultural reference to something Mexican here, but I didn't understand what that might be. The butterfly I got because, I watch documentaries, so I know about migration and that kind of thing. The horse, I understood, maybe not on the as deep a level as the creators did, but I'm like, okay, yep, horsemen, cowboys, I get that part. The running part I didn't quite understand until, I read about, the group of people that can run for miles on end. I'm like, oh, hey, that's a wonderful tribute to them. And then you put all of that together, and then the flowers, which of course are important because they're also used in Day of the Dead altars. So you get all these little cultural references, and once you understand them, you go, oh, perfect. Here you are starting, and yes, it's an imaginary or magical or a dreamlike world of Mexico, but it all comes together, and it opens up like a flower.
So then after that scene, the first act starts, which is hoops. And yeah, we've seen hoops previously, especially in the Leon. But again, this is elevated a little bit because there are two huge treadmills on the stage. And so, the guys and girls who are performing this act, they're dressed in hummingbirds. Which, when I first saw the costume, when I went to Montreal this last December, I got to see the hummingbird costume, and I thought it was a little strange. Like, what the heck? Like, like no more oval, no more literal representation. but so the hummingbird costumes are very colorful. I like it. I like this act. They're performing their tricks, obviously going through the hoops, back and forth, and the treadmills. They're moving in the same direction or the opposite direction, and I think there's one, two, three, four, five, either five or seven artists on stage at that time, and they're supposed to be very playful. Um, the first time when I saw it, I was a little okay. They need a little more energy. The choreography, the actual act, I guess, needs a little more energy. And then the second time I saw it, I enjoyed it a lot more. I love the music, the song, which is Así es la vida. In the soundtrack, again, most of the songs, or actually all the songs in the soundtrack, are faster than the actual show. And they do have that techno beat. Um, as far as liking the show music better than the soundtrack, I'm still not sure about that. I think the soundtrack is more enjoyable to listen, which is that's the purpose of the soundtrack. When if I'm at work, but when I listen back to the music of the show, it makes me smile because I remember those playful hummingbirds, the actual treadmills. I enjoy that act.
Yeah, I think that's one song that I actually like both versions. That I love the version on the CD. It's a wonderful introduction to the music. You open that up, and it's just a wonderful, playful, fun, and even colorful musically to listen to. And it really, if I need to pick me up, if I'm just having some low spirits, all I have to do is turn that on, and I'm just bouncing around in my seat. And I know that the hummingbirds they're flying around over here. But the same thing happens when I listen to it live. Yes, it's slower. It's more brassy. It's more a traditional, maybe Mexican music thematically, but it works. It's wonderful, and like I said, I think it is probably one of maybe two or three that I really like both versions.
We already talked about the second act, which is the Adagio, and that's perfect, no complaints there. Although Richard, I remember at the first time we saw it, you made a comment about either the costumes or the actual scene that you weren't sure, why.
Well, and that goes into part of the creation of the show, in that I didn't understand that it was a journey through an imaginary Mexico, and as such, I did not comprehend that each act would represent a different period or a place or a time within the Mexican culture. So the hummingbirds, although I didn't get the cultural context until a little bit later, was an act that I thought stood on its own. It's, you've got your treadmills, you got your flowers, you got your hummingbirds. It makes sense. They're going to pollinate. They're going to, they're just going to do what hummingbirds do. So in this act, all of a sudden, you've got a piano that comes on stage, tables and chairs, lights coming down, and you go, okay, I see it's a lounge or it's a bar, but why? And then the costuming is very bland. I think the guys have just this gray or this white ensemble. Yeah, and then the only really spark of color is a pink dress that this girl wears. And so going into it, I didn't quite understand it, and then coming out of it, I'm like, oh, okay, it's representative of this particular, that dance and music, are an ingrained part of the Mexican culture, and it's represented in this particular act in that way.
And then the third act is Cyr Wheel with trapeze. I think the best part of this act is actually the scenography, which is you have the huge disc in the background, and it's like orange, and it's supposed to represent the desert, and then you have those trees that go around the stage, and there's three girls, one trapeze, two Cyr Wheels, and they're doing their act. It's a normal Cyr Wheel act that we've seen before. There's nothing too impressive as far as the actual choreography of the act, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad act. I think the best part of this again is the scenography, just everything mixed together. And this is where the first time you see the actual water, hitting the stage.
Ooh.
So, scenography and the music. I really do like the music. Flores no Desierto is my favorite track from Luzia. It's always been ever since I heard the 15 or the 1 minute clip on iTunes. And I do like this song. Um, I don't mind. Well, first of all, Richard made a comment that when the rain comes, there's not really much interaction between the the artist, the performing the act and the water. It just kind of comes down. Um, but there's something that I didn't see the first time that I saw the second time. The running lady, she comes out, and it's supposed to again, it's supposed to represent the desert, and she's looking down on the ground, and it's all dry. So then she goes to the middle of the stage, and she just kind of like summons the water, and then the water comes, and to me that completely changed the scene because like it made it more, I don't know, beautiful in a way.
Yeah, she
Um,
just kind of taps the ground with her hand, just bends down and taps it, and then backs off and looks up, and then the water kind of comes down.
Comes
I
out
have a
and
question about the water.
go
I
ahead.
don't know if I should say it now or later, but
You can ask.
how gimmicky is it, or how beautiful is it? I mean, what comes off more than the other? Because one has to kind of outweigh the other. It's just a gimmick. There's water coming down from there, and it's used a lot. Or does it actually really enhance what you're seeing?
I think the only act I liked it in Cyr Wheel. I don't like it in freestyle soccer or soccer freestyle, however they call it. Just because I feel like in that act, it's just there. There's no reason for that water unless I'm missing it, unless that wall is supposed to represent something. To me, it just doesn't. There's no need for the water. Here, Enrique, are you gonna say something?
Well, I agree with you because when I saw it, I was like, okay. And to answer your question outright, when I first saw it, I thought the water was used very sparingly. It needed to be used more. So you see it in the Cyr Wheel act. You see it again in the football act. You see it. The clown plays around with it for a while, so it's part of a clown act. And then I'm trying to remember when you see it again. Of course, aerial straps because
Cierra
that's
los
all.
ojos.
Yeah, and then at the end of the half, and then at the second half, aerial straps, and then you don't see it again.
When does it spell stuff out and have designs? When does that one?
Right at the end of the right at the end of the first half, you'll see all the patterns in it.
There's no
Nice.
text though, so I know from the press release, and I mentioned to Ricky, I'm like, I didn't see it unless I missed it. It doesn't spell out Lucia like at the end of the show. I thought it was gonna do that, but it doesn't. Lucia, the spelling of Lucia in the water was only for the press conference.
Okay. So,
So
so the water's it's used good.
yeah, I think for the most part it
For the most
is.
part.
Um, when I was researching my written review for Fascination, I kind of was reading over where, yes, like light and rain, it's part of the name. But when you read some of the inspiration, it's rain in all its creation in Mexico, and they say there's all sorts of different kinds of rain. So like rain in the desert would be different than rain in the city, which is what the football freestyle is representing. That they're having a little pickup game of one-upmanship with the ball in an alley. And so now you're in a city setting, and so the rain is maybe not watering the desert, but quenching thirst, heat. A city setting is just a quick downpour. Whereas in the cenote, it's all water. So there are little cultural bits to it that again you wouldn't necessarily understand or maybe get unless you went and did some research on the show. So with that knowledge, I kind of understand it a little bit more in that football act, but to agree with Jose, I don't know that it was really needed.
Well, and if if you're going to use the water in that act, to represent the water in the city, um, it could have been they could have used it earlier. It's just it comes out at the towards the end of the act, and then both teams come out and they're kind of celebrating, but that's pretty much it. So I remember seeing the Red Bull video, and they were talking about how it was difficult. They had to pretty much learn how to manipulate the ball. A wet ball, and that's really soccer and water don't mix. Um, but I don't feel like they did much with the water. Again, it's towards the end of the act, and that's why I feel like it wasn't needed. Um, but again, that's just me. Yeah, the people love it anyways.
Yeah.
Regardless, a lot of the stuff that we're like, okay, what is this, or this doesn't make sense. The people love it, and one of the examples is, Ricky does not understand the 360 swing, but the audience they go crazy.
Wait a minute now. Come on, that to me was the first thing that kind of got me excited for the show. Because I know it's been used before, but I had never seen it in a show. So to me, it was brand new. And the tease, man, I'm all about the tease and the build-up. And God, it looks like it delivers on both.
Well, actually, I don't know. Are you talking about the Russian swings? Where the two swings like this, or the? Yeah. See that they've never really did that per se, and it's just it kind of comes right at the end of the opening of the second half, which is the pole dance, and we'll get into that later. That was not necessarily one of my most favorite acts of the show, but it kind of comes right after that because it uses the same apparatus, the Chinese poles piece of the apparatus. And so it's set up like you're at a carnival, and there's a lot of people standing around, they're barking, they're taking bets on whether or not he can swing around, and he just gets on this thing, and he goes up, and he goes this way, and forward and backwards, and he finally makes it around, and he goes around a couple of times. The crowd cheers, he's got the mask on, but overall, I go, why? Even understanding some of the cultural references, it's not a Cirque caliber piece. It's not even a good segue. It's just
it's a short act, and it's also not like a full act. It's very short.
Like under a minute and a half.
Right.
See,
If that.
that's beautiful.
It's more of an
I love that.
Act. And they're supposed to be like betting. There's the artist. People around the swing, and they're kind of betting, going back and forth. The singer, she's talking. I didn't have a problem with that act. It's not one of my favorites. It's not one that I'm like, wow. But I did notice that the audience just loved it. It was one of those where everyone was just cheering and having fun, and that was just my observation.
Because
the
looks
audience loved
fun. It looks really fun.
But remember, Ricky's jaded. He needs to know why it's there.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
it's understandable.
Jaded, but as when Dario said at the beginning, he's seen a number of shows and he is seeing a pattern, and sometimes they copy and paste, and so or not. But I want to see a progression, and that's just me. If you're going to show me a Russian swing act, make it better than what you did in Verikai. I mean, that has to be, if you're going to show it again, it has to be better than what came before. Bankin has to be better than Kidon. Russian bars has to be better than Allegria. And if you're not going to do that, then why are you even trying? I guess is what I kind of, or not try, but why are you presenting it? Look at that and say, what worked? How can we replicate that without copying it? So in this act, I'm like, well, I'm not seeing anything like that in Cirque, and then I just go, well, it's not really an act. Okay, you go round and around. Okay, that's cool and all, but why? You could put something more culturally relevant. You can put something more thrilling, but as I said in my review, the crowd loved it. So I guess the creators know more than I know, at least.
And it's a minute
show.
and a half, so yeah,
True.
it's in and out.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that.
But one act that is elevated, I think, when you compare it to the other acts, which is the fourth act, is hand balancing. And this one, The first time we saw it, I was like, no, I do not like this. What is this? This doesn't make sense. This is tacky. I think I did say this is tacky. And it's the hand bouncer. You know, it starts with.
Well, paint the scene for us.
All right, so this is right after. Oh, I'm sorry. So Cyr Wheel ends, and then the clown comes back. Actually, let me go back a minute because I do have to say something. So after Cyr Wheel comes, you know, there's after the act, you know, there was water use in that scene, in that act, and so the clown comes out. The stage is completely dark, except for that, you know, the spotlight is on him, but they are drawing the stage. Even though it's dark, you can clearly see that they're drawing the stage. And to me, that was one of the things that I did not like about Luzia. I think they have to work on some of the, you know, the transitions when some of the artists leave the stage and when they're actually drawing the stage after Cyr Wheel. And it's even more noticeable if you're like in section 101, 102. You know, closer to the stage. So, you know, he's doing his little act, but and it's fun, funny, nothing major. It's not one of the best clown acts you'll see. But again, you know, the audience likes it. They're laughing. I'm done with my little rant about them drawing the stage. The lights come on, and you see these waves kind of going around the stage, and you see kind of a director, and then several artists in the background. And
he's on a buoy.
lifeguard,
He's on one of these buoys or something, right?
who the
hand balancer, yeah.
Because he's a lifeguard, so he's dressed in, you know, this red lifeguard suit, and it says. I think it says, how do you say lifeguard in Spanish? I forgot, but it's in Spanish, I believe. And so,
You forgot?
yes, yes.
I have to go to Google Translate.
I think it's salvavidas, but that might be too long. Hold on, let me see really quick.
Salvavidas, yeah.
Is it?
Salvavidas, yeah. Salvavidas.
Am I lying about this? Did I not see it in Spanish? I think it was.
Well, I got some pictures. I'll look it up. You keep talking.
All right. So, anyways, so he comes out, and the first thing you notice on him, besides his lifeguard costume, is this huge mustache. Okay, huge mustache. This is really ripped guy with a huge mustache, and then so you have the director there, and again, they're at the beach. Here's a lifeguard. Here's a director holding one of those director cones or whatever, where they yell out. And
you are correct, Jose. Salvavidas.
Salvavida?
Yeah.
All right. And so, so you know, he goes, Hugo, listo. Hugo is the.
Listo.
Yeah, he goes, listo. And then she goes, la señorita lista, and she goes, lista.
Listo.
And so then he goes, you know, he's calling for, I think, for the actor. For the lights, and everyone's like, listo, listo, and then he goes, acción, and the scene starts, and the first thing you hear is Pez Volador, which Pez Volador, when the soundtrack came out, was my least favorite song. I didn't really like it, I didn't understand it. So the act starts, and, you know, he has the canes, and he's pretty much building the canes up as he goes, and he's balancing on them, and then you hear, corte, you know, the scene cuts, and the guy's like, I think he says something to the clown. I guess the clown kind of interrupted the character. Then, you know, take two. They try again, listo, listo, and the music starts again. And so while that's going on, while the act is going on, you have all the other actors. With a lot of them, there's some from Cyr Wheel, but you know, they're obviously dressed differently. Oh, they have this it's like glass. How would you describe their costumes?
Yeah, like not sequins, and that they were really bigger, but these are squares, kind of like little windows.
Or triangles.
Stained glass. Were they triangle? Okay, so little triangular, like stained glass windows almost, but that
and
could also
like
reflect.
Like a wife beater type, and then like with like really short shorts or speedos or whatever it is, and
Beach
so
shorts, yeah.
Yeah, so then they're doing like these kind of just joking around, around the near the waves, and the girls are everyone's kind of just like laughing and making these noises, and again, I'm like, what is going on with this act? Like, I don't get this act. And then he cuts again, and then he calls for the birds, and the birds come down, and they bring more, like two more canes, but this time he's like really up there, and so everyone's like and he finally does it, and I did forget to mention Ugo, the hand balancer. He plays with the audience, like he's moving his, like, chest with the music, his pecs, I
His
guess.
pecs, his
Yeah,
pecs.
and then with the music, and he's kind of like winking at the audience,
Little mustache.
obviously the girls. Yeah, and then he moves the mustache and all that, and so the act ends, and after intermission, I think Ricky and I both turned, and we're like, what was the hand balancing act? Like, what was that mess? That is so tacky. I don't get it. I don't like it. Like, just take it out. And when we saw it the second time, man, I don't understand why I didn't like it. I mean, it was so funny. I'm laughing through the entire act. I'm watching the hand bouncer because I'm just amazed at how he's playing with the audience, and just the entire mess that is going on the set. It's great. So so I hope they don't take that act out now. I hope they didn't hear what I said. Um, but Ricky, do you want to explain what the scene represents?
Well, the scene represents like the golden age of Mexican cinema from the 40s and 50s. So obviously, money. There wasn't a lot of money to make these sets, so they're very simplistic. They are. I would describe them as cheesy. These pasteboard waves, and just it's all about the sex appeal or the dance or whatever's going on. And so you've got this cheese ball of a set and this cheese ball of an actor, and he is playing with the camera, playing with the audience. He is hamming it up, and he is making the hand balancing look so easy, and yet you can tell that it is hard. His muscles are bulging. He's holding on, and he's just like lounged like this, but one arm, on his elbow, and he's just ta-da, and as Jose says, he's climbing the poles, and as he gets the canes all set, the last couple of things he does, an arm split, and the poles are all bowed out, and then he does it with his legs, and he total split and back up again, and you go, wow. I mean, yes, it's a whole cheesy thing, but once you understand it's supposed to be tacky, it's supposed to be cheesy because it's representing that part of Mexican culture and history, the 40s and 50s movies, it clicks and you go, okay, I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to enjoy the cheese because here it is, it's a fun act, and it's an amazing performance.
And it's one of those acts where I was again listening to the music from the show. It's kind of like you just want to be there again. You want to see everything that's going on. You want to just turn and just laugh at the mess that is this act. Now in a good way. Before it was in a bad way. But so Dario, I think you're really going to like this act. You do like cheesy. So this will probably be one of your favorite acts for sure.
And I really enjoy hand balancing. I don't know if for some reason I've seen it a bunch, but if you do it right, it can really blow your mind. It really can. And yeah, I don't know. It kind of gives me a Canteen Floss kind of vibe. He was a Mexican comedian who was all about cheese from, like, I don't know, the 60s or 70s. And I love
Oh, I know
that.
what you're
I
talking
love
about.
those.
Christine Plus.
Yes, I
How do you know
love
Christine
those.
Plus?
Come on now, dude. I'm a film fanatic, and that guy was funny. And that's the kind of vibe I get from it, like very tongue in cheek, but like, winking at the audience and that. I'm all about that, man. And that song, by the way, I loved it from the get go. Loved it from the get go. I
I
knew I
like
was
it
like,
now.
okay,
After hearing the one in the show, I like it now, and I think the song fits great with the act.
good, because it just has a fun, silly, cheesy vibe, and I get that right away. So this is act number 4 or 5.
This is act number 4.
Okay.
So after the hand balancing, it's soccer.
Right.
And so, there's really not
I've got comments about this.
really. I was gonna say there's really not much to say about soccer. There's just
I've
it's
seen
kind of
a
like a
video clip.
competition.
I've seen like
So,
a minute and a half clip.
so what are your comments about the act?
I almost bit my tongue off from not necessarily not understanding or getting it, because I don't care about that, but just how icky it felt to me. Like, it's cool. It's Spanish. It's soccer, Mexican soccer. Whatever. But the girl just feels like she was transplanted from a whole other universe and put there to kind of like learn this skill and like they're one-upping each other or something. But then there's this little dance routine they do where she sets the ball and they move and they go back and forth. Oh my God, I'm just like biting my knuckles so hard to not. It just feels really silly and misplaced, and the choreography and everything, just the costumes. To me, that's the one that I know I'm going to go into. I might be making some noises.
I think that sentiment is probably what Jose and I felt when we went into it. We thought it was kind of a mess. One of the things that I commented when people were posting pictures to Instagram was that there's no pictures of this act. We saw little video clips and things, and like, is it even in the show? So I had to ask friends that saw it, really early on. I'm like, yeah, it's there. I'm like, is it any good? And I'm like, it's okay. And so we kind of went in with no reservations. It's like, well, I guess it is what it is. And it coming out of it is what it is. It's just this little piece. But I will tell you, going in, I didn't want to like the music, and coming out, I like the song of that act.
It's great. It's Pambolero. It's on the soundtrack.
Oh, I love that track.
The main difference, again, it's a little slower, but there are no lyrics in the show. The Pambolero on the soundtrack has lyrics. Those were added for that song, but they're not in the show.
Bummer.
But it's still a great song.
I know, but I like that. I like that vibe that it was given with the vocals on that track.
So, Richard, music-wise, what do you think was your favorite part of that act? See if you know what I'm thinking.
Well, okay, so there's a part in the CD where it just kind of, the melody stops, and then you kind of get this little dun 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 dun, and so in the show, right, so you're a little bit more brassy, and then all of a sudden this guy comes out and he's got this box, and he's pounding on the box like he's doing this little beatbox routine, and I as soon as that came out, I looked at Jose and I go, you gotta be kidding me.
I think he's kind of like, I think he was wearing headphones. He's supposed to be like a DJ.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So I go, this, what are you doing? But again, sometimes it takes some time for it to kind of click. And as I listen to the CD and as I'm listening to the show music, I go, okay, you know what? That's a moment where I said, what the? But I love it. Because I know that's what's happening exactly on stage, and I know there's this goofball out there with his little box, and he's hitting buttons, and and I'm like, but I love that part now.
I've always loved that part. That's one of my favorite little breakdowns in the CD.
Yeah.
Ironically, I in no disrespect to the artist, because obviously I would never be able to do that, and they know what they're doing. To me, it just seems like there's two people here at the front of the stage, just going back and forth, doing some, soccer ball tricks. Okay, but to me, I really enjoyed what was going on in the background, the interaction between all the other artists. They're supposed to be like cheering them on, and when the guy comes out, with the DJ, one of the artists comes next to him, and he kind of turns the knob, like he's kind of helping the DJ too, and they're all like kind of yelling back there, and then the Straps act, again, he's wearing a different costume. He's supposed to be a different, in a different scene. He kind of just runs towards everyone, like slapping, kind of like giving them high fives, going down the line, and so
They do a
it was
little
just,
break dance, you know.
yeah,
It's
exactly. So to me, that was the more entertaining part, which is not supposed to be, you know. Um, but yes, the music is great. The what's going on in the background is great. The soccer freestyle, you know, it was okay. It's nothing to me. It's nothing great, nothing very impressive, I guess I should say. Um, but again, the audience really liked it. You know, they're cheering them on, and yeah.
Huh. I'm shocked. I really am. I mean, I get it, but I'm shocked. I'm just gonna have to keep an open mind until I see it live, which is this one's pushing my my
buttons.
boundaries just a little bit.
See, now that we keep, like I keep mentioning the audience and how they like it, so now I'm wondering if this is more of a Montreal thing, or if it's
If it's
something
gonna
good in the
carry
show.
on, yeah.
Right, exactly, because you know people from Montreal love Cirque du Soleil, and
And those people
I've
want to
never been
be
to a
there.
premiere, so Richard can speak more of this if he knows or
Oh
thinks.
yeah. I mean, I've always said, and I use it as an opening for all my reviews of new shows when I go to Montreal. There is nothing like seeing a show in the hometown with the hometown crowd. I mean, you know, with Kuza, as I've said before, you know, they gave the show 5 standing ovations during the show. Some of the individual acts got a standing ovation. You know, back with Verikine when it premiered, you know, they were on their feet, they were stomping in the stands, you know, during the Russian Swing Act. For most of the shows, you know, they really, really enjoy it. They really come out and support it. The show's, you know, 99% sold out. I mean, yes, you'll see some seats, you know, that aren't taken because the people don't show up. But for the most part, the shows are full. They're energetic, and I think that's also part of you know a new show when it starts out. The cast is so fresh. It's so new. They're so ready to give you the show that they're giving you 110%. So that feeling and that energy comes out, and the audience understands that, and they grasp it, and they give it right back. So even in things like the 360 swing, where maybe a more seasoned fan like myself would go, huh? Or in the football freestyle, where we would, you know, you would look at each other and go, it's not bad, but you look at it and you go, what's the Cirque element to this? Because there's not a Cirque element to it. It's just people doing some tricks with a ball. Impressive. I can't do it, so I find it impressive. But I didn't find it, there was a Cirque element to it. But the crowd loved it. So I'm like, crowd loved it. We'll go with it. The only show, and I hate to say this, the only show that the crowd did not like when I saw it was OVO. They did give it an applause, but there was no standing ovation, and I was shocked. And the applause was very tepid. Just
Really,
you
you
know,
were shocked?
I was because coming off of Veracay and Corteo and Cuza, I expected, because you're in the hometown, I expected a little bit more of a response. You know, even if they thought it was bad, they would at least give it a little bit of a little bit of support. But the crowd that I saw it with, and in fact I saw it 2 or 3 times, the crowds were the same. They're like, great,
Crickets,
crickets, yeah. But in
ironically.
yeah, they loved it, and which was great because if you got a crowd that really isn't into the show that you're performing, the energy level obviously isn't there, and then the performers they don't really care either. I wouldn't say they don't care, but they don't feel that they're going to go ahead and give you that extra 10% in their performance. They're just going to do
Some
what they need to do.
motivation.
Right, there's no motivation. But for Lucia, I don't see, and even in this act, I don't know how the U.S. audiences will review it, I guess, because soccer isn't as prevalent here as it is in Latin America.
They'll love it in
But
Mexico.
they'll love it in Mexico. They can't wait to have it in Mexico. But I think it has energy enough that your average Cirque du Soleil goer will look at it and go, wow, that's pretty cool.
And it's something that you
Sweet.
haven't seen on the Cirque du Soleil stage. So,
That's true. Maybe they should have saved it for the 2017 show.
oh yeah, extreme sports.
Exactly.
So after soccer, the singer comes out, with the main character or slash clown, and she starts singing "Cierra los ojos," and this is where the water comes down with the
The patterns.
the patterns, the flower patterns, and you see I think there's a jaguar in there, and it's just it starts beautifully and it ends beautifully. So this is where we first see the papel picado lantern type curtain that goes around. But before that, the horse comes out again, and the running girl is coming down right above the horse, and she's doing her little running thing while she's descending, and this was for me one of the most beautiful parts of the show. Just the water, the curtain, the music. That song live is so awesome. And then once the curtain comes down, the rest of the artists come out around it. Similar, it reminded me of Corteo when everyone comes out right before the curtain goes down, and they're all singing, "Padam padam padam padam," which now has right, exactly. So that's what it reminded me of. So everyone is around the curtain and they're singing. Oh my God, what are the lyrics? Ya lo descubriste, si el cielo llora, no sirve ponerse más triste. And he goes, nunca, nunca, jamás. And so everyone is singing that. And there's, are there some people playing instruments out there as well? Can't remember.
I think the band comes out. I don't know that they're actually playing. I mean,
yeah, no, they are, because remember, some of the artists have like drums.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's again similar to Corteo. And so then, that's the end of Act 1. That's, intermission starts, and the curtain stays down. And the horse is actually in the middle. Huh?
Is that about an hour, typical?
Yeah, about 50 minutes. About 50 minutes.
Oh, a little under an hour.
Yeah, I think all shows now kind of did a little snip so that, it's not an hour, it's, about 45 minutes to 50 minutes.
And then a 25-minute intermission?
About a 20 or 25-minute intermission, yeah.
I'm Kelly. I do Adagio in the show, and one of the pole dancers.
Devin. I do hoop diving, treadmill, and also Chinese pole.
And I'm Rachel. I do Luzia and also pole.
I'm from Seattle, Washington.
From San Francisco, California.
New York City.
Kelly, is this your first time with show with Cirque du Soleil?
It is. It's my first show with Cirque du Soleil. I was performing in Las Vegas with a different show before, and this is my first opportunity with Cirque.
And Devin, is this your first time as well?
I'm also new to Cirque du Soleil. I was performing with other circus companies before, but this is the first.
Me as well. Yes.
How did you get hired on with Cirque du Soleil?
I actually received a phone call. I was starting a company with 6 other hoop divers, and I got the phone call from Cirque du Soleil, and I just decided this would be a great opportunity. I asked the people if they wanted to join in with, and they said yeah. So.
That easy, huh?
That easy. That easy.
My next question is, because this is your first show with Cirque du Soleil, how was the creation process?
It was a roller coaster. It was really interesting actually getting to meet people that do much different disciplines than me and then what everybody else does, and find out how the show is really going to come together. And we worked with a lot of different choreographers and a big creative team, but we're able to do a lot of group warm-ups, so we would meet with each other. We were singing, we were doing percussion, we were doing acting, and so it was something that kind of gets you out of your shell and get you to know everybody, and then trying to create acts that haven't been seen before, even if it's a discipline that you have seen, but hoop diving using a treadmill and a turntable, or doing hand-to-hand type but trying to make it look different, as well as the treadmill and the turntable with that. We're using water.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to learn to do Cyr Wheel in the water.
And how was that?
It was really hard at first because, the water was actually very, very cold before they figured out how to get it there. So we would do these little spurts, and so it would always be like, okay, when are we gonna really do it? And it was sort of, as we finally started to be running the show, that we started to get more comfortable.
A lot of falls.
There was a really good one once where I fell down and my wheel went flying and it hit one of the trees, and it was only the tree that stopped it from falling off the stage. It was a good one.
And what is your actual discipline?
Russier. So I actually just finished at the National Circus School in Montreal, where Devin went also, but years ago. So I finished, and this is my first job doing Russier, which was my specialty there.
And Devin, what is your
Hoop diving as well.
hoop diving as well?
Yeah.
And I grew up doing gymnastics. I competed in NCAA gymnastics at University of Washington. And then I was doing acrobatics in another show where I did kind of a general track, so I got to do a lot of different disciplines. And so in this show, my main act is physical.
So how would you describe Luzia?
Luzia? Like to perform it or as a show?
As a show.
As a show, I think it's a good show. I think it's a colorful show. I think it's got a lot of heart. And I mean, for me, it's kind of fun to perform it. I know that some shows I've done, I didn't feel as much of a rush of energy, but this one I feel like I'm on stage and I'm immediately like gotta light up for it, because wearing these wings.
I think what's interesting about it is I had a friend ask me like if I was thinking about the whole story when I was on stage, and what I realized is that each scene, the show is made so that each scene really travels from place to place, and you're exploring the geographies and the environments, and so each world, as a performer, I inhabit it like a little mini microcosm that Eric is visiting, and so he kind of links the scenes, but while I'm the same person in Russier technically as I am in football, as I am in the finale, not really. It's almost like in each scene I like pop up, I appear, I live it fully, and then it disappears. And in that way, to me, it's like a little bit like the Odyssey, when it travels from island to island. So each scene is kind of like an island, and we populate this environment that Eric explores. For me.
And it's like the culture and different aspects of Mexico, and so we got to learn a lot about that as we created the show too, and what each little detail means in the culture, even from the running woman and the butterfly. Like butterflies migrate to Mexico, and the running woman was a tribe of runners that are in Mexico, and so they're all little pieces of the culture there. And we have some of our performers and our singer is from Mexico, and so we learn from them too, and get to hopefully do it justice as we do the show.
All right, and since Devin brought it up, how would you describe being in the show performance-wise as a performer?
I relate to what Rachel said too, where it's a lot of fun, but you can explore different emotions depending on which scene you're performing in. And we're lucky that we get to be in most of the show. Everyone has appearances throughout the show and not just in your main act. And so you get to feel kind of a more heavy emotion maybe in Adagio when we're doing it, but then during the finale, then it's a party, and so you get to have that too. So it's a lot of fun.
I think what's different from what I saw our first show with Cirque, but from what I understand, there's a lot more freedom. Maybe not in our acts, which are very precise, but then when we are doing cues, like when we're in football, there are whole sections of it which are, we know generally what we have to do, but we're improvising, and so there is this level of like always searching, and some days it's not as good as the other days. And it kind of forces you to make the choice either to invest yourself or not, and to really like, okay, how do I do this differently today? How do I like, and we end up just messing with each other,
I think that's what's for me too.
That's
what's
nice.
really fun is like being with these 44 people on stage, and every night it's like I find a new moment that I didn't have the night before or the day before. And it's what kind of keeps it alive for me is like, okay, I didn't see your face last time when I was in this act, and now I do, and now I can relate to what you're doing. And for me, that's kind of the fun part of being on stage.
Let me ask you a side, kind of a wacky question regarding your hummingbird character. So in your discipline, you're doing hoop diving. So you come to Cirque and they say, "We love your skill. You're going to do hoop diving. You're going to do it on a treadmill, but we want you to be a hummingbird." So what's the first thing that kind of clicks in your mind? Are you out of your mind, or do you embrace that?
We all just kind of laughed for a good minute. And then it was a process of, okay, they really want this idea to work, so how can we, to our best ability, make it work, you know? I mean, there was a lot of back and forth of, okay, this wing is incredibly long. There's no way we're going to get through the hoops. The beak is hitting every time we do this trick. You know, there was a lot of back and forth with the costume people, the production team, and eventually we came to consensus that, okay, this will work. They put a window in here, now I can see, you know, like, just like little things. And the costume team, I mean, these are amazing costumes. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, maybe not the best for hoop diving, in my opinion, but
Added challenge.
we make do. It's added challenge.
But it's the same like for us. Originally, they wanted us in ankle-length skirts. But like this was a negotiation between these inches was a real negotiation, and then it was the same for us in Ruzia. We were either like, if you're going to do Ruzia, which is something that moves around space and is really hard to precisely control in space. Okay, you have to be exactly there, otherwise you're going to hit that other girl and that trapeze and those trees that are moving. Oh, and we're going to two parts of the floor turn like this. So that was what a lot of creation was learning how to reinvent what you already do and learn how to do it in a new environment in a way that the audience might never realize that this isn't what I always did. In order to create the image, whether it's making you a hummingbird or having trees turning around us, it takes a different kind of adaptation than you would normally do in another environment. That was definitely
So would you say that because you're trying new things, or some of the acts that we've seen but in a different way, would you say that there was a lot of frustrating times during creation? Or
I would say a creation, it's going to have its moments where you can get frustrated, but you can either take those and get stuck on them or try to overcome them, And a lot of times, it's frustrating. It's a battle. But if you really believe in what you're doing and you want to make it better, then those frustrating times are going to come. You're going to overcome them, and it's just going to be that much better when you actually get through the hoops or spin in water, or run on a treadmill doing it hand-to-hand, It's like those things, it's cool when you overcome them. So.
And how long was creation?
I don't know.
Yeah, the creation started about 2 years ago with the production team, but artists started coming in September. The hoop divers were actually the first artists to come, and then I started in October.
and we came like later.
Yeah, they came a little later. Our musicians came in January, and so it was really about, for us two meeting our team and her starting to work with
We were
the
three
trapeze
soloists, and now we're a trio.
and building your act, and then really as more people came, creating it a show, like a cohesive show, so that you all work together. And I think really when the musicians came, the life
felt
of
more,
Luzia came.
They
to
really
the
brought
show,
the
and it was-
spirit.
Yeah.
So when you're practicing your act in creation or doing the act in creation, is the music already composed? Like, do you get to practice with the
For
music?
our show, it was already composed, but it changed throughout creation. That's all part of the creation process as well. So when the musicians came and seeing what their strengths were and adding their own flair and style to everything, then the music that we've been practicing all of a sudden sounded completely different to us, even if it was the same song technically. And as like the length of the show was adjusted, the length of each act was adjusted. The music changed. Some acts completely changed, and others just minor details.
So what's your rehearsal schedule like? Or how about your day from when you wake up and it's a show day?
I think everybody has a pretty varied schedule of what they do during the day. I start my day with an insanity workout each morning. Depending
Just
on,
her.
yeah. I've got a few. I've recruited a few people to do it with me.
Not Devin, huh?
No,
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Soon.
And then it depends if we have a 1-show or a 2-show day. So today, our call time was much later than it will be on Thursday through Sunday. But since we're not all from here too, I like to tour the city and kind of see different areas that I haven't seen before. And then we'll come in maybe 3 to 4 hours before the show. There were trainings today, so I had about an hour Adagio training and then working out here. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do makeup and hair. And then we eat here. We do a group warm-up. We get any notes for the show that they might have for us from the day before, if anything's changed. And then you warm up, get ready for your act in the show. So.
All right, and so this question goes to all three. Aside from your act, what's your favorite part of the show? Can't be biased.
Can it happen off stage? Because there's the whole show you guys see, and then backstage there's in the backstage and also back in the tent there's a whole ritualistic thing that everyone has their little things they do and that change all the time, and it's like the second show back here. So can it be part of that too?
Sure.
I like watching the musicians, and so we get to see them in their booths when they're not on stage, and they're still always playing live. And also before contortion, we get our candles that we set, and so we get to kind of see them playing the marimbas, and so I love watching them. We also don't get to see most of the show because we're always in it, and so either you're on stage or you're changing or getting something ready. If you do have a moment, we can watch it back here as it's happening live, but there's some acts that I've never seen their final kind of how they've turned out. Yeah.
I got two. My favorite act is gotta be Adagio. I think it's got its flavor, it's cool. There's so much going on, but yet you can focus on the act itself, and it's beautiful. The second thing is actually, it's like a personal thing. I'm doing the scuba thing, so I go up to the top of the grid, and I think climbing that ladder is maybe my favorite part of the show. Just because I get to climb up, try to beat my record every time with how many seconds I get there.
So you're the one in blue.
I'm in blue.
Okay.
Oh, you suck.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I do that.
All right, so why should people come and see Luzia?
I think you'll be amazed, you'll smile, you'll laugh, you'll have a good time, and hopefully you'll see some things you've never seen before.